What's happening, guys? Thank you for tuning in to Rules for Rebels, and in today's video we're going to talk about challenging yourself with a Misogi. So first off, what's a Misogi, right? This sounds like something I might order from Benihana's. It's actually a Japanese purification ritual, and I believe it involves like a physical feat and then some like purification ceremony and bathing under a waterfall. We're less concerned with the history of it and more concerned with how you can implement something similar into your life. This has been popularized by a player on the Atlanta Falcons. I forget if it's Kevin Carver or Kyle Carver, but every year he does one of these Misogis and he takes on a challenge with buddies of his. Now, what a Misogi is, it's some type of physical challenge that you take on, they say regularly, so like I guess like once per year. And it's supposed to be a feat that is very difficult and that you basically have a 50-50 shot of completing or not. So it could be doing like a, for some people it could be running a marathon. For other people it could be doing like a 50-mile or like a 50-mile or 100-mile run. For some people it, maybe paddleboarding across Lake Michigan or something like that. I know Carver, one of his was paddleboarding 27 miles across some lake. Another thing he and some of his teammates did, or some of his buddies did, was they would go out to the ocean and they would find an area where water was maybe like 10 feet deep, and they would go down to the bottom and pick up an 85-foot boulder, and I think there were maybe 4 of them. And the first guy goes down and picks up the boulder, and he runs with it along the bottom of the the ocean floor for as long as he can. When he's completely tapped out, he drops the boulder, swims back up to the top, and the next guy goes down, picks up the boulder, and runs with it as far as he can. Now, their goal was to do a 5K like this. So, pretty impressive. The guys who aren't actively carrying the boulder, they have weight belts on, and they're treading water, which is a workout in itself, right? And that was their Misogi one. Like I said, another year he paddleboarded 27 miles. So the idea of a Misogi is something that you take on, say once per year. You could do it more regularly. And it's something to really challenge yourself. And they say it's not a true Misogi if there's not a 50% chance of failure. So, saying I'm going to go run 5 miles, that's not a Misogi. Saying like I'm going to bike across the USA, something like that would be a Misogi. Now, I realize not everybody has like, weeks or months off of work to take on some crazy task like that. But basically find some task to really challenge yourself. And the point of it isn't necessarily even to complete it, although that would be a big rush if you did. The point really is to realize that we put artificial boundaries on ourselves and to be able to push yourself and realize that you can do a lot more than you think you can. If any of you guys are into like personal development stuff or follow David Goggins or like any like Navy SEAL kind of training stuff, they always talk about the 40% rule or the 50% rule, which is when you think you're completely tapped out, when you think you're done, you're only at 40 or 50%. We give up on ourselves too easily. And there's actually part of what kind of ties into this Misogi thing. There's like evolutionary wise, we were made to be risk averse, because way back in the day when you were a hunter and gatherer, if you broke your leg or broke your ankle doing something, you're pretty much dead, right? You can't defend yourself, you can't fend for yourself, you can't hunt, you can't do anything, so you're going to starve to death, let alone there being no hospitals and whatever else. So, in an evolutionary sense, we are meant to be risk averse. Well, we don't really live in that world anymore, so we can push ourselves a little bit further. And basically the idea is you do this one activity per year that is going to be so extreme that it's going to kind of cause a transformation in you for the rest of the year. So you ever know someone who like ran a marathon and like for the next couple months they're like really confident and really pumped and really hyped and stuff? Like that's basically the concept behind a Misogi. But I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast on my drive home from Father's Day. I had about an hour to kill in the car. And they had Jessie Itzler, who was, if not the founder, one of the co-founders of Zico Coconut water. He had a private jet cart business where I'm guessing you buy like fractional ownership in a private jet. Because, a lot of people probably want access to a private jet but can't afford having the whole jet or don't need the whole jet for themselves. Earlier in his career, he was a rapper. I think he wrote some songs for Ton Loc in his early 20s, and he actually went on to start a company, and what the company did was write jingles. He would go into the, because he was a rapper, he would go into the studio and produce little jingles and things for like the NBA, NFL, MLB, for individual sports teams. I think he got into video editing and stuff, and would like put highlight reels in along with the music for advertising and stuff like that. So he created that. I think later went on to sell it. I actually had a pretty interesting story about when he was starting that business. He needed like 10 grand to go into the studio and record all these demos to sell to the teams. And some guy offered to basically fund this business, but the guy wanted 70% of that business and 70% of everything he did for the rest of his life. And he was roommates with this girl who had some like rich baller dad, and he went to that guy for advice. And I guess the guy asked him, is this something you can get started on your own? And he said, well, I suppose I could probably get it started on my own. And he said, well, go tell that guy to fuck himself. He's trying to take advantage of you and get this thing rolled out on your own. And that's actually what he wound up doing. I think he got an advance to make a demo, $2,500 advance to make a demo, made that demo, then wound up being paid $20,000 for the song. That money helped him bankroll making the rest of these demos, which he then sold to a bunch of professional sports teams, and I believe later sold that business to some Fortune 500 company or something like that. But the guy's lived a really fascinating life. In the thing he talked about, I've made this video 2 or 3 times. I keep messing up, so if I talked about this already in this video, I apologize. But he talked about having a life resume, and he said, every couple months he likes to go out and try to check off some box to have some experience or do some crazy thing or challenge himself. And I thought that was kind of an interesting concept. We talk about our professional resumes, right? Where'd you go to school? What certifications do you have? What trainings do you have? Where have you worked? But how many of us keep like a professional resume? And they kind of talked about happiness and stuff like that a little bit, but it kind of tied into like, have a professional resume, check off some boxes, have some crazy experiences, share some crazy experiences with friends. And that was one of his things, is like, I'm trying to keep a professional resume. So he went and climbed Mount Rainier, and he said like every 2 months he tries to go do something fun or do something extreme and kind of make some memory. And I thought that was kind of a cool concept as well. I'll probably make a future video where we talk more about him and that episode and just some of he's done some pretty cool stuff. He went and lived at a monastery in New York for 15 days. And wrote a book about it that was pretty interesting. He also, I don't know if you guys know David Goggins. David Goggins is a lot of people call him the hardest man on earth. He's an extreme runner. He was I forget if he was a Marine or a Navy SEAL, but he's also an extreme runner. If you ever listen to personal development, motivational kind of tapes and things like that, he's got the story about how he had to run around a 100-mile track to get into this ultra marathon. And at the time, he wasn't a runner. He was like 260 pounds. He was a power lifter. He was peeing blood. He broke all the muscles in his feet. He was crapping himself, and he finished a race anyways. But real hard guy. And basically this Jessie Itzler had David Goggins come live with him for 30 days. And for 30 days, it was just like pure torture. He said at one point they were doing, Goggins was like, you know what? Let's run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So they would run 4 miles. That would probably take them, 30, 40 minutes, something like that. Go shower. And now you got, 3 hours and 20 minutes or something like that till you have to run the next 4 miles. And so, being woken up in the middle of the night, interrupting his work day, every 4 hours he's having to run 4 miles. And he did this for 48 hours. There were a bunch of other kind of funny challenges that David Goggins put on Jessie Itzler during this time. But I'll link to this Joe Rogan episode. I thought it was really fascinating. The guy's an entrepreneur. He's done some pretty impressive things, but I thought some of his insights and attitudes towards life and things like that were pretty interesting. So again, I'll link to that in the description box below. Have you guys heard of this Misogi thing before? Have you ever done it before? Even if you didn't necessarily know what a Misogi was, have you ever done something similar and taken on some big challenge like that? That's something that I think about a lot, and I don't necessarily always follow through on. But back when I used to have my little sailboat, I was saying, I'd like to try to sail across Lake Michigan. Recently, I've thought about trying to paddleboard across Lake Michigan, or because I don't really have people who do a chase boat thing, I'd probably have to stay close to the shore, which would make it a lot longer. But go from Chicago around to New Buffalo or something like that. But yeah, this concept of a Misogi is really kind of fascinating to me. I think it's really kind of cool and interesting to kind of challenge yourself and test your mettle, so to speak, or see what you're capable of. I've been looking into some 100-mile races coming up here later in the summer or fall. But yeah, let me know if you guys have ever done anything similar to this, or if you know anything about this concept of Misogi. Drop your comments in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button below, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.